Today, we're going to talk about how to be a good net control station operator. Hello, my name's Tyler Smith in for TYL, and let's jump right into it. So what is a net control station? If you think about a wagon wheel, the very central part of that is called the hub, and from that radiate out all the spokes. That's a really good analogy of what a net control station is. It is that capability in the center that helps stabilize the rest of the crew, and it's that central point for that directed net. So the net control station has some very important roles. Number one, they are responsible for managing the flow of communication. So that means handling emergency and priority traffic in a proper order, and to make sure the information is flowing from the net control station out to the individual tactical units, and vice versa. More often than not, the tactical units are relaying information into the net control station, which further gets handed off to a member of whatever net and whatever purpose that serves. Additionally, that net control station has to maintain a list of all the tactical units, all the stations that's in use, and their particular assignments. And I would also add in here, they need to maintain a list of capabilities. Some cases a station may have APRS capabilities. Other times a station may have VHF combined with HF capabilities to allow to reach further outside of the local area. Additionally, you got to make sure you maintain clarity of communications. Sometimes, as you know, someone may be on the edge of coverage. There may be a lot of static. You may need repeats, refills. Sometimes you may need to ask for a relay, so they need to make sure that information coming from the furthest part all the way back to the net control station is clearly understood, and vice versa. Additionally, you'll be called on to maintain order. Sometimes there'll be doubling going on. Sometimes there'll be radio interference. Sometimes there'll be unnecessary chatter. So it's a job of that net control station is really to maintain that order of the net and take control of it and exercise some leadership there. And then finally, one of the key jobs is record keeping. Often this can be handed off to a third party, but if it's a smaller net, you as a net control station operator are going to have to keep logs of call signs, movement, event logs. Those types of things is very critical to the function of a net. So what does it take to be a good net control station operator? There's some things that you should have. First and foremost, you've got to have a clear voice with good hearing. If your voice sounds like you got a mouthful of marbles, it's going to be garbled and people are going to be a little confused and not understand that message. There's going to be lack of clarity there, lots of repeats and refills. There's going to be confusion. So it's very important you've got a clear voice. And additionally with that, you've got to have good hearing. Sometimes people are on the edge of a band. There's a lot of static in there. There may be interference. There may be a lot of background noise from the traffic coming in. So you've got to kind of pick some of that out, and having good hearing and being able to understand the human voice is very critical in these roles. Additionally, your equipment has to be in good working order. If you're going to be a net control station and bring your own equipment, which I would advise you to do, you got to make sure that equipment is in good working order. Freight terminals, equipment that you haven't tested on, equipment that's old, equipment that you've had issues with. There's no place for that in a net control station. And I'd also recommend that not only do you have equipment that you need, make sure it's in good working order, but always have a backup. Things happen in the field, so having that equipment, having a backup plan, or a buddy there with additional equipment is always a great idea. You also have to exercise good judgment. There's going to be times that you can't predict everything that's going to occur in an event, and you've got to exercise good judgment. There's been times I've been in an event, there's been too much traffic coming on. We're asking for too many things. It's very hard to understand. It's just one of those things that you have to make a call. Hey, let's reduce the traffic so we can get the information that's absolutely critical. And it's okay. As a net control station operator, you've got to use your judgment, take charge of the situation, and adjust as needed. Make sure you're using good sound judgment. You've got to be a team player and organizer. To be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. And oftentimes, the net control station may be embedded with emergency communications, area or may be involved with, you know, in a tactical group or another area like that, and they're taking communications and frankly orders from others to be able to pass this traffic. So you've got to be a good team player, and you need to be able to organize and keep yourself organized with respect to notes and other things that you have. I can't say any more else about this next topic about adaptability. It's very key. You can't predict what's going to happen in the net. There may be some times where you get to where you're going and realize, oh wow, there's this giant metal freezer right next to where we're going to set up, so we got to rethink our strategy. Or during the net, there may be a crisis come up. In the middle of the net, someone may call emergency. I need an ambulance or assistance of that place. You need to be able to be aware that there's going to be times that things that changes, and you have to be adaptable to that. So you got to be very flexible in these situations. Another key element is having a self-assured management style. This is a key leadership. It's kind of hard to kind of teach this, but you have to have confidence in your capabilities as an operator and as a leader. And there's times that you may have to take control of the situation on the net, maybe to tell people, hey, we need to cut out the chatter. It's okay to do that and take that leadership. You are in charge of that net, and you're expected to lead it. Additionally, you've got to have the ability to handle stress, both physical and mental, for long periods. If a net gets operated, sometimes these nets go for days, and you're going to be put in a situation where it may be less than ideal. You may not be able to take a shower for a day or two. You may be sitting on a park bench, trying to do the net control station. Also, when you're dealing with critical events where there's emergencies and people are getting called from ambulances and dealing with a lot of negativity on some of these nets, you've got to be prepared for that mentally, to process that stress and maintain that professionalism as a net control station for a long period. The next area of patience and calmness, you've got to be patient. Sometimes radio communications are choppy. Sometimes there's some of the operators are on the edge of the band, and sometimes you have to repeat a couple of times. Hey, can you repeat that? Can you repeat that? So that patience and just having a general sense of calmness goes a long way. If you as a net control station operator get excited, everyone else in that net's going to get kind of spun up and excited too. So it's important, no matter what's going on, to be calm. Think about the police and fire when they do dispatch. They're very calm, very articulate. Here's the facts, and they kind of move forward with that. Additionally, you need the ability to tune out distractions. There's going to be times where you get set up and all of a sudden there's a football game going on next to you. Going to be a lot of loud noises going on around you, and you have to have the ability to kind of tune that out and focus on the job at hand. Good record keeping is also vital. Often you'll be taking notes about what time the event started, what tactical units came in, their call signs, and the information that they provide during that. So having a good capability to keep records and maintain that is critical. Being able to multitask. You're going to be on the radio and you need to be typing or handwriting at the same time. So you got to have the ability to do that, and it's a key and distinguishing factor. And then finally, you've got to really understand the operational capabilities of the equipment. If you take someone with HT and send them out 8, 9, 10 miles, chances are they're probably not going to be able to communicate to you with a base station. That might be a better job to handle with a mobile base station in a car or those types of capabilities. Understanding those operational parameters of VHF and UHF, things like UHF inside a building goes a lot further than VHF, and being able to adapt to some of those changing conditions is key to that. I added a couple things that's optional, kind of helped me out a little bit in my tenure as a net control station, is really having a headset. It helps with that hearing part. I've got a little bit of hearing loss there, and having that headset brings in the communication. It's a lot clearer and allows you to hear that, and it leaves your hands free for typing or taking notes or other things of that nature. And then having a foot switch. If you got a foot switch, you're not sitting here clicking with your radio, you can have your hands free. It just gives you a lot more flexibility, and it makes it a little easier to be a net control station. So what are the responsibilities of a net control station? First and foremost, you need to organize and direct the net. So organization means before that net gets called, maybe you need to lay out the tactical units and assignments and have those prepared ahead of time. Also make sure that you've got the script down that you're going to use for the net. And then finally, when the net comes, direct the net. You are in charge. You are that leader. And it's your job to control and manage that net. So make sure you do direct the net. A couple of key things that I would tell you here is start and end the net on time. If it's a net that starts Thursday night at 7 p.m., you make sure that net starts at 7 p.m. and ends on time. Be good stewards of other people's time because they've made a commitment to come and join the net. Start it and end it on time. Also, you need to lead by example. Use good operating technique. Make sure you're putting your call sign out every 10 minutes and using clear, concise information as you're operating that network there. Also, use ITU phonetics. When you use non-standard words like box and queen and all of these other types of non-ITU phonetics, it's very difficult for people to understand that because they're listening for Bravo or Charlie or Quebec. They're not looking for these other ITU phonetics. And it causes a moment to pause when you use non-standard ones. Don't be bossy. As ham radio operators, we're volunteers. Everyone that does this is volunteer. So don't be bossy. Thank people for their time for coming to the net. Can't say that enough. People are volunteering their time. Be thankful and appreciative of that. Don't be bossy. Don't let your ego get in the way of that. Another key thing is to maintain control. Keep the conversation on topic. Oftentimes I've heard nets that kind of strayed away and started down a tangent that was not really on the topic of that particular net. And there's times for that. There's kind of open, casual nets where people just talk and basically, talk back and forth about random topics. But when you're a net control station on a directed net, that net is meeting for a purpose. Keep the conversation on topic and make sure you maintain control of that. And sometimes, you're going to have people that stray a little bit. Be very polite and try to steer people back to the purpose of the net and kind of manage some of those interruptions in a polite manner. And remember, you are always in control. If you're the net control station operator, you are in charge of that net. So make sure you maintain control of that network at all times. Lastly, record keeping. It's a net control station. More often than not, it's like a single net control station operator without a third party logging for you or on your behalf. So you're going to have to keep up with some traffic there. So make sure you log participants and key information. It helps. You can do this in Excel. There's some other software programs out there that you can do. Frankly, you can use a sheet of paper and a pen if you need to, but logging those participants and some of the key information is going to be part of your job. Maintain an event log. What time did you start? I started at 8 o'clock and I ended at 8:27. Those types of things of critical events during that, and sometimes there may be a training topic in some of the nets. So make sure you kind of record some crib notes for that. It kind of really helps when you're doing maintain that event log kind of post-mortem. Report incidents or issues. Sometimes if you're having an issue with a net or something you need to address, you may need to report that up to someone higher up to kind of address that. And then pass traffic, as requested. As a net control station, you may get an inject, somebody hands you a sheet of paper, I need you to pass this traffic. You need to take and make sure you pass that traffic. And often it's not listed here, but you may need to file an after net, some paperwork after the net. Here's how many people showed up, here's their call signs, here's when it opened and closed, some of those types of things. So record keeping is a part of our job. So what are some of the key skills for an effective net control station operator? Some of these kind of overlap what we've talked about before, but I want to make sure we understand these. First and foremost is clear and concise communication. That is what that net is for, is to make sure that we pass traffic and everyone understands and that the information is copied accurately and correctly. So a couple things you can do there is to speak slowly, clearly, and professionally. Oftentimes when you're on the radio, if you're dealing with a crisis event, you'll want to start speaking faster and faster and faster. It's very difficult to hear that over radio. Slow down, speak slowly, speak clearly, and be professional. The gold standard here, you think about police dispatch, when they're calling out, they're just very calm, and in professional voice, they handle themselves very, very professionally. We want to have that same kind of operating principle and practice as a net control station. Use good mic technique. I've seen a lot of people, they'd almost swallow their mic and they're right on top of it like this. And what happens when they do that, you hear a lot of pops and sputters and different things there, and it's just very difficult to understand. You want to speak over the top of the mic and use that good mic technique to make sure you're appropriate and you're not blowing air into the receiver there. If you don't, you'll end up having a lot of noise and extra crackles and pops on the line. Leave time between responses. Very critical there. There may be a time when you want to leave that space for someone to, frankly break in and say, hey, I've got an emergency. I need you to pass this traffic very quickly. And leaving that space between key ups and key downs is very critical. You remember we're half duplex, right? You can listen or you can receive. You can listen and receive, but you can't talk and do both. So it's one way or the other. So it's half duplex. So make sure you leave that time for people to break in. Use standard phonetics. We already talked about that in the last slide about ITU phonetics and procedures. So if the net has a pre-canned script or procedure that they like to follow, stay in line with that. Follow that script. Keep close. You can deviate a little bit from that where it makes sense, but use those standard procedures and keep that format flowing, because that's what that net is used to. Maximize the words not said. Sometimes if you ever ask for someone to give you a match and you get the history of fire, not a good operator for a net control station. Be very clear and very concise. In fact, it's okay to pause for a little bit and kind of think about what you're going to say to kind of minimize the words that you have to say. That's one of the reasons why they come up with pro words, things like emergency, priority, break, those types of, weather report, those types of things kind of help to break in and communicate some message. Hey, you got some message to send there. So maximize the words that's not said. Say what you mean. No Q codes, no PIN codes, no jargon. You want to be clear and concise. Instead of QSY, say, hey, we're going to change to the secondary frequency, and that frequency is. It's okay to say that. Say what you mean. When you use Q codes, not everybody may be familiar with CW and those Q codes, and they may not understand what you're asking them to do. So say in plain text, hey, or plain method, here's what I want you to do. Break subjects apart. If you're calling in a list of, I need these supplies to be sent to this location, and then you also need to send a list of gasoline and supply maintenance parts to another location, you need to make sure you break those apart. Do the first list, make sure it's acknowledged, they got what they need, and say, okay, second list, here's this, what's needed for the mechanical depot over here, and walk through that. Finally, listen carefully. Sometimes you may have someone on the very edge of the band that's very low and light. Maybe their mic's not turned up all the way. Just listen carefully and pick some of those situations up. Also, maintain situational awareness. Sometimes you may have to, as a net control, monitor multiple frequencies. And that seems like it would be kind of easy to do, but when you're in net control station and you've got one earbud on one frequency and one in the other one, sometimes it's very difficult. I would tell you, if possible, get a friend to help you out with doing that, because it's very difficult to monitor 2 channels at one time and be a net control station. But sometimes you have to, and that's to help maintain awareness. You might be on a primary, one of the primary nets, but then you also need to monitor a tactical net for what's going on, or measure or monitor some of the weather conditions in the background on another net. Sometimes you have to do that to have that situational awareness. Also, use relays as needed. Sometimes you may not be able, as a net control station, to hear everyone. So request, hey, did someone else copy that traffic? Can they repeat it back to me so I can understand what was meant there? And then stay alert to changing conditions or emergencies. So if you're in the middle of a weather crisis, keeping your TV on, maybe minimized a little bit in the background, having the weather radio kind of in the background, that kind of helps to understand any changing conditions, or hey, there may be another tornado come up. You need to warn the net, hey, you may need to take cover. There's a tornado warning that just issued and possibly on the ground in this area. Patience and composure, another key critical fact here. You've got to remain calm under pressure. Sometimes you're going to have multiple pieces of traffic that all hit you that you need to communicate at one time, or you may have a lot of incoming traffic. So you just got to remain calm, tell people to slow down, pause, do whatever you need to do to take control of that situation and process the traffic. And remember, it's your job to lead that network, and you have to lead it with calmness and patience there. And then sometimes there's times where you got difficult situations. I've seen fights break out a couple of times verbally on the radio, and it's okay to say, hey, let's take this down a notch. We can take this offline and have a discussion a little bit later. Just make sure you handle things diplomatically. And sometimes, people may get some operating procedures a little bit messed up because they're in the middle of an event or whatever. And it's okay to have patience and just kind of handle it, and just, you can calmly say, hey, please give us your call sign when you get through. Just make sure we're using good technique. Those types of things, just calmly reassuring and kind of pointing people back. Handle it with tact and diplomacy. Here's some best practices I kind of put together. It's kind of a mini checklist, so to speak, that I use to kind of get ready for a net and kind of execute it and make sure I understand. So hope you find some value out of these. Before a net even starts, I always want to take a look at the net's purpose and what that desired outcome for that net is, whether that be a Skywarn net, Aries net, or something that's supporting like our local Red Cross. So I always review that net's purpose, agenda, and kind of make sure I understand what the desired outcome for that is. Additionally, I go through and make sure all equipment is functioning properly. That's, maybe a day or two before the event. And also when I set up there on site, I also do another check just to make sure everything's running correctly. I don't have any issues to kind of minimize any impacts that I could have. Other things I would do is tell you to use or develop a script. Sometimes there's one of these that's already pre-canned for you that you can pull down and kind of walk through each step in the script. Sometimes you need to develop one. And sometimes it may just be a sheet of paper with a couple of key points and things you need to remember to do or say, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be extensive, but sometimes that developing that script kind of helps you. If nothing else, keep a list in your head of the things you need to do. During the net, I'd recommend you take as many call-ins as you can before acknowledging. What this helps you to do, if you're acknowledging after each one, just takes a long time to do check-in, so take as many as you can. Usually I go to, I can't hear one of the call signs or something along those lines, and then I pause there and kind of go back through the list and get repeats. Manage doubling. Unfortunately, some people are going to key up at the same time, and you're not going to be able to hear things. So it's okay to say, hey, there was a double there. Please repeat. Something along those lines, or hey, there's a double. I know the first caller had a K. Please go first. do those kind of things to help manage that doubling there. Manage traffic based on priority. Of course, emergency, priority, and routine traffic. Emergency comes first. So as traffic comes in, if there's something that's priority or something that needs to go out, kind of an all call to the net, make sure you kind of handle those key bits and pieces before maybe a smaller tactical issue comes in. Repeat important information for clarity. A lot of times during the net, you got to remember these tactical units are moving, they're doing different things. It's okay to send out the information, and then a couple of minutes later, send that out again. And the reason you want to do that again is just make sure that people understand. If someone's moving, jumping in and out of a vehicle, there's a lot of loud noise, they may not have heard it the first time. So it's okay to repeat that, every 10 minutes or 5 minutes if it's something critical to the operations. It's okay. Remember to balance the need for speed with importance of accuracy. Sometimes there's kind of a dichotomy here, two-faceted things. Sometimes with speed, you can get most of what you need, and that's okay for that particular message. At other times, you need a lot of clarity in that information. So it's your job as a net control station operator to kind of balance those two different things there. Stay calm. One of the things I can't stress enough, if you get spun up in an event, everyone else is going to get spun up on that net. Stay calm and keep control as a leader. Even if things are kind of getting out of hand, your calmness and demeanor and your approach to it is going to bring calmness and kind of keep the net under control. Be decisive. It's okay. You make the best call you can. Sometimes you're going to make a mistake. You're going to mess up. That's okay. But based on the best judgment and what you know at the time you have it, make a call. Be decisive. One of the worst things that can ever happen is for you to be weakness or demonstrate some sort of weakness or indecisiveness. If you do as a net control operator, it's going to undermine your effectiveness to truly control that net. So it's okay. Make decisions based on the best information and move forward. Follow FCC guidelines. You got to throw your call sign out every 10 minutes. That even matters inside a crisis or emergency or net control station. You got to make sure you follow those guidelines and use good operating principles. For long nets with silence, sometimes weather nets that get activated, there may be long periods of time when they're silent. It's okay if you have some silence in there. You don't have to fill up all those spaces. At those times when everyone's kind of on standby, maybe every 30 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever kind of makes sense, do a roll call. Tactical Station 1, are you online? And just do a roll call that way, because there may be times where some power got lost and someone may have dropped off the net and you're not aware of it. So it's important to kind of do that roll call to make sure they're still there. Ask for help if needed. Ask for relays. Does anybody hear that station? I'm having a hard time making them out. Can you repeat that? Can you relay it for me? And sometimes in net control station, if something major is going on, you may need to write a note or take a pause. And it's okay in a network, in a net control station, say standby 1, put the net on pause, get with someone and say, hey, I need you to go make a call. We've got an issue over here. It's okay to kind of handle some of those traffic. So feel free to do that and ask for help. After the net is over, one of the things, where possible, I try to summarize key points almost like an after-action report. There's some ICS forms that you can use for this as well. But really, the key point is to really summarize what happened during the net. Keep your logs, make sure you maintain the integrity of those and don't lose them. Thank all participants. Like I said before, we're all volunteers and volunteer operators, so thank people for their time. People are doing this because they care and their heart's in the right place, and just thank participants. And then submit any logs you have. A lot of times these, go up to someone else for review. So make sure you keep those logs and send them on as needed. All right, here's a couple things you need to avoid. Things like thinking out loud. Like, say you get on the network and you're like, And you're using up airtime, not a good thing to do on the radio. It's okay to say stand by one, pause, think through what you're going to communicate. Sometimes you need to do stand by and then think about the best approach to that quickly, and then repeat it over the radio and do that. Another thing to avoid is arguing on the air. I've listened into some radio network or radio nets before where people were arguing back and forth, and just, I mean, it's almost like, man, if they did in a room, they would throw down the gloves and start beating on each other. It got so intense. So avoid that arguing over the air. If you catch some of that as net control station between two operators, number one, they should only be communicating with a net control station operator unless you've given them permission to go direct. But if they're arguing that, it's okay to calm down and tell them, hey, let's take this offline and go deal with it. Also, don't criticize over the air. But like, hey, what are you doing? What were you thinking? That kind of stuff. You don't want to do that. Save that for later when they come back to the net control station and you have a chance. Deal with it one-on-one, because basically you're kind of calling someone out in a crowd. Always deal with those situations one-on-one, direct. Don't do it over the air. It just gives ham radio and our operations part kind of a bad name. So don't do that. Final thing, don't ramble. Don't ramble. I've heard people go on and drone on and on and on, and it's like, oh my goodness, when are they ever gonna stop? And you're sitting there thinking, well, there's a 2-minute timer. Oh wait, we're on simplex. There is no timer. So anyway, some of those types of things that people ramble on, don't do that. Shouting into your microphone. When you shout into your microphone, guess what? They're not going to hear you on the other side. You can scream as loud as you want. It's going to be gobbledygook coming out the other side. So the other final thing to do is talking to pass time. So sometimes the nets run maybe a couple hours in a weather event, and sometimes people will get on those events and just sit there and unnecessarily talk back and forth and kind of cut up and things. It's not really appropriate for net, so avoid this. All right, here's some common challenges and how to overcome them. There may be some times that you have to handle some interference, whether it's intentional or unintentional. It can kind of jump into the middle of a net and really impair communications. So one of the quickest things to do is change frequency. Hopefully everyone was briefed beforehand and programmed all the alternative frequencies into their radios. And you can simply say, let's change to the backup frequency. And then if someone doesn't know what the backup frequency is, they can hopefully call out. So it's one of these situations where you may need to basically listen to two frequencies, or get one of your buddies to stay on the old frequency, listen to it, and relay that information back if needed. So good technique is to change frequency if you need to. Other thing you could do, if it's not too if it's not too loud, or disruptive, you can just ignore it. Frankly, you don't necessarily want to call out them on the network, because they know if they're getting in, they may actually want to do more of it. So a lot of times the best thing is simply to ignore it unless it's just really loud. Or if it's another group, another ham radio group, you can politely ask them to change frequency. Typically, most good operators, if you say, hey, we have a net going on at this time, most operators will gladly move a few kilocycles up or down just to get away from you. Dealing with difficult participants, stay professional and courteous. There may be some times that people just really get under your skin. Just stay professional and courteous as a net control operator. You're in charge. Having that calm demeanor, it says a lot, and it helps to de-escalate activities that may occur there with a difficult person. And sometimes it may be necessary to ask for assistance from another station. to go pull that person offline or hire authority. Don't be afraid to do that with dealing with difficult participants. Managing high traffic, basically I tell you prioritize communication is based on the urgency. There's some things that are more urgent, like a need for an ambulance versus a number of runners running by, for example. Reduce message volume. So always remember there's a couple of things that you can do. If each operator takes 30 seconds to relay messages, if you can shorten that down to some degree, or tell them to go to manual collection of data and bring it back to net control, kind of post-event, that kind of thing can help reduce that bandwidth and you get more messages in time. It's your job to lead that net. So if you need to make a call like that, it's okay. And then handling mistakes. You're going to make mistakes as a net control station. It's okay. Just acknowledge it. And sometimes I've made some pretty horrific mistakes in my life and in my career, especially. And it's okay to say, hey, sorry guys, I messed up. Laugh at it and kind of go on. Don't try to hide it. Everybody knows what you did or said or whatever. Just acknowledge it and move on. Best way to handle it. All right, here's a few practical tips. Just remember your job is to communicate, and it's okay. Primarily we're doing radio during these events, but it's okay to communicate. If you need to pick up your mobile phone and use that, if you need to use a citizens band radio, it's okay to do that, or GMRS, it's okay. Our job as a net control station is to get that message through. Sometimes you might even be utilizing a fax machine that's hooked up to a ham radio to communicate messages. It's okay to do that. Sometimes you may need to send a courier. Your job is to get that message through whatever the means necessary. So that's okay. And I know when I said the term CB, a lot of people like cringe, but it's still a method of communication. It's still radio. And if you can use that to get a message through, I'd absolutely do it in an emergency situation. So don't be afraid to use that or telephone if the radio or primary means is not working. Take breaks. During high traffic events where you're getting a lot of information, you're recording, about an hour is about all I can do effectively. I starting to lose some of my vigor after that hour during the high message traffic. It's okay to kind of pass that off, take a break, switch out, let someone else do it for an hour and kind of flip back and forth. That way you don't burn someone out too quickly. And when you do that pass off, make sure you pass off the current status to that relief net control station, kind of hand that off as you move. Now, during longer events where something runs 5-6 hours, but there's not a whole lot of traffic, you can do longer in those types of events. So you kind of gauge what that is and make sure you have a relief operator for some of those longer events. Know your equipment. You need to know how to program your equipment, your radios. That's your lifeblood, being able to program them from the front panel. If you got to bring your computer or take it back home to program it, there's going to be some times as a net control station you may get in trouble because the primary frequency didn't work and the secondary frequency didn't work, so you got to go to a tertiary frequency to get something to work. You may have to program your radio to get it up and running, so you need to know how to do that on the fly in the field. So know your equipment, make sure you understand how to do that. Use a checklist. When I get ready to go out in the field, I've got a checklist of things I need to put in my backpack. I need my radio, my antennas, my headset, just all the things I need for that event. I make sure I've used that checklist. And I also go through that checklist, check my equipment out and pack it in a bag, and then I put my checklist on top just to go through it one last time before I leave in case one of my kids or something got in there and like, hey, this is cool, let me pull out one of these radios, and it disappears. So have that checklist. Stay hydrated and comfortable in these events, especially during the long nets. Make sure you're drinking water. Sometimes you'll be out in the heat. Make sure you take care of yourself. Stay hydrated, comfortable. Some of the longer deployments, you may need to bring some snacks or different things, especially if you're deploying a long distance away. Also, have backup plans. What happens if your primary radio fails? Do you go to secondary? Or is there an alternate net control station that's going to be set up there that you could flip over to if needed? Just make sure you have kind of a continuity plan there. If nothing else, in the back of your mind, well, I'm setting up with a portable on my bench. If something really bad happens, I can go get in my truck and do net control station there. Just having a simple plan is always helpful. Kind of to wrap up things here, being a good net control station is really about clear communications, controlling the network, and maintaining your composure. Those are, and to wrap up the last 40 minutes or so, I'd say those are really the key facts there. And I would tell you, the way you get good as a net control operator is to practice and participate in these types of nets. It improves your skills, and it's okay when you're starting out, you're going to make some mistakes. That's okay. You learn by that. You get your confidence and ability to run those nets up when you go through and do some of those. Anyway, thank you. Appreciate your attention, and hope you got something out of this. This is Tyler Smith in for TYL, and hope to see you soon.